on the surface, I would imagine that Elizabeth Holmes is a very difficult person to find understanding for. And I think as empathy educators, our goal is always to find understanding.
Yeah.
We're already not struggling with it on a like emotional level. We're struggling with it on an intellectual level. Like we were talking before this about like, okay, so but how do we get to I will lie?
Yeah.
To become this person that I want to be. We haven't figured that quite out yet. Everybody, we're the good doctors of Abbey Research. I'm Dr. Kristen.
And I'm Dr. Erin.
And you are very welcome to our conversation about Hulu's show, The Dropout, which covers Elizabeth Holmes and the Elizabeth Holmesiness of it all. Too long didn't read. If you're new to this, Elizabeth Holmes defrauded people out of hundreds of millions of dollars and put many people's lives directly at risk by inventing and not really actually inventing, but her claim was that she could test, 32 tests of blood or whatever, 32 blood tests on one drop of blood. Mm-hmm. She venture capital raised tons and tons and tons of money, in the billions, for a prototype that never actually worked, even though she sold it to Walgreens, and it, worked. It, was put in Walgreens. People's test results were mixed up. Everything was a mess. Since the beginning of all of this, and now, she has been convicted of those fraud crimes, specifically of financial fraud. She was not convicted of putting people in harm's way, I think because the jury thought that that was a lot more on a corporate level and not her personally. But she personally opened her mouth and lied to people to get their money. Yeah. And so that is why they have convicted her of fraud in that case. Between the 2002, which is when this show really starts, when she's at Stanford, and now, there's been a lot of writing about Elizabeth Holmes. There's been a book called Bad Blood by John Carreyrou, which I cannot recommend highly enough. There was a documentary on HBO called The Inventor that we covered here on the channel. And then now there is the grand Hulu treatment with a miniseries starring Amanda Seyfried and Naveen Andrews. Up front, we want you guys to know that we love this thing already. We think it is really well done.
It is really well done, yeah.
And we are gripped, even though we know this story more than the average person, because this is a rabbit hole that I just lassoed Dr. Erin and dragged her down with me. We each have, personal rabbit holes.
Yeah.
And some we do alone. And then every once in a while, we'll look at the other person and be like, you're coming with me. This is, I'm not asking your consent. You're coming with me. And that's what I did on this. I was like, you have to know who Elizabeth Holmes is. And I made her watch The Inventor. And ever since, we've been following this story.
Yo, for sure. Yeah. I mean, we both tangentially know all of each other's rabbit holes.
Yes.
And, have to have a base level of knowledge so that one can rant at the other about said rabbit holes. But yeah, so sometimes we play the card and we're like, you're coming with me.
You're coming.
Let's go. And I'm so glad you did, because it is, I think I messaged you yesterday as we were both watching the first 3 episodes, and I was like, this would be just utterly the most fascinating case study of a person if she didn't harm people. And it is still really fascinating.
It's still really fascinating, but if she could have just done Firefest, I would feel a little bit more comfortable.
If she had just lied and not actually harmed people who were sick. But y'all, she is just... We just spent 20 minutes before we started filming kind of downloading the first 3 episodes. We have so much to say.
So let's get to it. So the first episode is essentially Elizabeth's time at Stanford. That's really the thing. It's called The Dropout because she very famously drops out of Stanford. I think because Steve Jobs dropped out of Stanford.
I was going to say 100% because she thought, yeah, Steve Jobs did it. This is the path to success that he has laid out.
So we learned before she gets there that her dad was an Enron executive. She grew up in Houston. He was obviously fired, let go, whatever, in the Great Collapse. We discover that she has the social skills of a Tibetan tree frog.
Teaspoon, yeah.
Cannot human. She just cannot human, and not in a on the spectrum way, in a different kind of way. She cannot human. We learn that her mother is obsessed with appearances constantly. My favorite part was when she went to go get blood work and her mom threw away the blood sugar cookies. I was like, that is some diet culture. And they kept talking about snack wells. I was like, oh, PTSD flashbacks on snack wells. At one point in between, I'm assuming high school and college, she goes to Beijing for a summer where she does an immersive language program where she is everyone's nightmare on the study abroad.
Oh my gosh. It was she corrects everybody. She demeans them for not speaking in Mandarin the entire time. And it's real clear that she does not understand human beings. And we're not sure why, like you said, at the beginning in this episode, we're not sure if she's on the spectrum or something else is going on. And it's all about peeling back the layers to understand why she can't human.
And in the middle of all this, she is determined to invent something that is super great. She has a poster of Steve Jobs on her childhood bedroom wall. So she wants to change the world through a famous disruption. Mm-hmm. A very specific kind of thing. Yeah. And so we see a lot of her prototypes. This is an invention. She appears to be somebody who invents fake things all the time, but has never actually built anything.
No.
Yeah, she just invents time machines. But she's never she's not Tony Stark here. She's never actually built a thing.
Right. She doesn't understand how a time machine would work. She's
not an engineer.
She's not an engineer. She's not a biochemist.
And
she has
honestly,
ideas.
She doesn't seem to think she needs to be either one of those things to actually do the work.
To be an inventor of biochemistry things.
It's a very interesting interpretation of the Steve Jobs success story, to be completely frank. But when she's in Beijing, she meets a gentleman who, it's just flapping red flags. Just a sea of red flags as far as the eye can see, named Sunny Balwani. He creeped me out from the exact second he was on screen. Yeah. But I know that that's who she ends up with for decades. And so I'm like, ugh. He's played by Naveen Andrews, who is Saeed from Lost, who I have loved since Saeed from Lost. He is also in Bride and Prejudice, one of Dr. Erin's favorite movies of all time.
Oh my God.
And he is crushing this part, because if I had first met him in this part, I would never watch him in anything ever else again.
No. One of my early notes is why did they do this to Naveen Andrews? But obviously Naveen Andrews chose to do this because he is a person with agency. But two of the sexiest characters in my cinematic and television universe, Saeed and whoever he played, the Bingley character in Bride and Prejudice. Man, and then he's in this role, y'all. He is
they both are. Seyfried is too. They
are strapped in, man.
So he's 15, almost probably 20 years older than her.
Close to 20 years, yeah. Because when they're talking about when he went to college, she was 2, so that's 16.
Yeah,
years.
He is the kind of guy that absolutely introduces himself as a millionaire because he does. Yeah. He is a Pakistani American at the turn of the 21st century, which means he gets patted down a lot. He gets harassed a lot. He bought a Lamborghini because terrorists don't drive Lamborghinis. He's got some baggage. He has some anger management issues that immediately red flagged me. And it is interesting to me that he is this into a 19-year-old. Because it doesn't appear to be a healthy... I understand we're not supposed to judge other people's relationships, and we should also say that many other things in this movie are probably very verifiable by depositions and whistleblowers and research. Obviously, we don't know what was in their relationship. Right. So Elizabeth has talked about some of these elements. They've gotten it from other people, but like, we don't really know. But
and it was it was secret for a long time.
So secret.
Too. Yeah.
And we should also say that one of the contentions that Elizabeth Holmes made on the stand in her defense is that she didn't do all the lying, Sonny made her. This movie, this show contends differently. Mm-hmm. But on the stand, one of her contentions is that he forced her to do that as she is a victim of domestic violence. So they are certainly setting up that relationship as a possible... They are certainly setting up this relationship as that possibly being true. Let me say that. Whether or not it is or not, and lots of people have debated whether Elizabeth is a reliable narrator, which I'm going to go with no.
It's going to be a no from me.
A no from me. So then she gets back to Stanford. She attempts to be a human. God love her, honestly. She tries her best. There's a lot of rehearsing in the mirror. The look on Amanda Seyfried's face when that guy is, when she's having sex with that guy and he's like singing along to the song. I was like, this is the best, like she's an alien from outer space trying to figure out what mating rituals are. Expression on her face.
Yeah, it's 100% like something you would have seen from like Men in Black.
Yeah.
Like with the alien who has the human skin trying to like understand. Yeah, the look on her face is like, I'm trying to puzzle you out.
Why are you this? I hate so much about the way you choose to be. Like, what are you doing?
It's just, I don't even think there's hate there. I think there's just a lack of understanding and confusion.
Yeah, she's
like,
really
she
just
doesn't
puzzled.
seem upset by it. She's just like,
what is happening?
Why are you human? As he's like thrusting into her to the rhythm of the hip hop music. I was like, oh, she does not know how to access her emotions.
And somebody talks her into going to a party and like being a freshman in college for once, and she literally rehearses in the mirror how to talk to other people, the tones of voice to use, how to hair flip, all of those kind of things. And what we discover is that she, in the meantime that she is doing this, is still inventing things that aren't real. And the thing that she has invented now is a patch that you can wear that can diagnose and treat illness. Sure. She pitches it to Bill Irwin, who you may know as the dad from the Jim Carrey Grinch Who Stole Christmas, but he's also an esteemed theater actor. He's been around forever. And he's some sort of graduate professor experimenty person.
Yes, Channing Robertson is his name.
And his name is powerful enough that she drops it a lot with other people as she's starting to try to get money for things. And he says, you need to go talk to Phyllis Gardner. And if Phyllis Gardner says it'll work, I'll give you money.
Yeah.
Phyllis Gardner is my favorite person in this show so far, all 3 episodes.
Oh my God, and she was in it for like 10 minutes, and it was the best 10 minutes.
By the eminable Laurie Metcalf.
Perfectly cast.
Phyllis is a biomedical, revolutionary.
She's a doctor. She's a doctor of medical science.
Who also teaches at Stanford to give back. And we know this because, we watch her being interviewed and Elizabeth's in the audience and blah, 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 blah. So she goes to Phyllis and she says, this is my invention. And Phyllis thinks she's insane. And my favorite thing that Phyllis says is, if you think people want to be diagnosed by a patch, you've never met a sick person.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't get a diagnosis from a patch because human beings aren't machines.
And then she says, but the data will diagnose it. And Phyllis is like, but data's wrong. Data can be wrong.
Humans still have to interpret data.
Yeah.
Data can be wrong and humans can make mistakes.
So famously, we know from John Carreyrou's book that this is the only person in Elizabeth Holmes's career who has said no to her.
Who told her, no, it won't work.
It won't work. Everybody else said we need more time, or like this is the only person, and I find it very fitting that it was a woman who just looked at her and said, you don't get to skip steps.
You have to do the work.
You gotta do the work. Go be 19.
Yeah.
Go be 19 and do the work.
Yeah, and like there's a point so fascinating where Elizabeth quotes Yoda at Phyllis Gardner, and she says, "Do or do not, there is no try."
The look on Laurie Metcalf's face.
And she was like, "It's Yoda. It's from Star Wars." And you know, that was the conversation in the office, and then Elizabeth kind of follows her out and like stalks her out of her office. And Phyllis looks at her and says, like, you know, don't take advice from a little green alien. Science is trying. Like, that's what science is. And I loved that line so much. And right before that is when she told her, like, you don't get to skip the steps. Like, you have to do the work. And it's very clear that those, like, I love Laurie Metcalf. She's so good at it. But, like, for those of us that know the story, that was the heavy-handed, like, foreshadowing.
Yeah.
That, like, she is going to take absolutely the wrong lessons from this. She is going to say, like, no, science is doing, and no, I get to skip the steps. And
because I'm an innovator. Because I'm the next Bill Gates.
To do the work. Yeah. And I was thinking so much about this, and we'll get into it as the story develops in other episodes, but, like, I was like, this makes me want to read a short biography of Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, because I'm pretty sure they worked in their garage for, like, years. Like, yeah, they dropped out of Stanford, but they did the work. Like, you have to have a product that works.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I keep coming back to, like, even with Adam Newman and WeWork, and, like, this is one of the endemic things about venture capital once we hit the 2000s, is that everyone very conveniently forgot about, like, the 3 decades that Steve Jobs didn't eat because he was working.
I was about to say, he built computers in his garage. And, like
he knows the tech. He knew the tech. He hired somebody else to make it pretty, but he built the tech.
Yeah. And he had to prove that the tech could work before people would, like, and you know, she does get into this. I think it's the next episode when so we'll save the discussion about kind of how venture capitalism works and this like weird catch-22. So we can get into that, I think, in a later episode.
Yes.
But yeah, I think my overwhelming thought from this episode was just like, and I know I texted you my first all caps note, and you know, when we write in all caps, we're emphasizing points. But I write in all caps, like, to get out my frustration. Of entire, like, show notes from The Handmaid's Tale that's all in all caps. But my first all caps note from this is, but the science, Elizabeth. And I feel like that's she's in a hurry. We get that song played over and over again. She loves it. I'm in a hurry and I don't know why.
By Alabama.
Oh, nice. I just knew it was a country song. And, like, cool. Science, you can't hurry science.
Or love.
But, like, we had this conversation in the last couple of years as we were talking about, like, vaccine development. People were like, well, why don't we have a vaccine yet? And scientists were like, because science. Like, you can't rush it.
Like, this life is not CSI.
Yeah. CSI lies to you.
You have been lied to.
Yeah.
Getting back to the story, though, so after that meeting, the other thing that happens is that for some reason, she's in a sorority. This boggles my mind. Why did she rush Kappa Alpha Theta? But okay, she did.
Well, because she thinks that's how it is to be human. Like, everything she does is mimicry, I guess.
Wow. Yeah.
Maybe her mom was in that sorority. I don't know.
Yeah. Her mom could have been a legacy. That's entirely true. So she's in Kappa Alpha Theta and they go to a party, and at a party she is sexually assaulted. No one believes her. The school will not take disciplinary action against the gentleman. I would also like to remind everybody that Brock Turner went to Stanford, so...
Hey, Stanford, hey!
Her mom comes from Houston. Her mom is the only person who says, I believe you. Mm. And as they're talking, then she looks at her mom and she says, I love you. And her mom's response is, we should wash our hands. So if I was going to summarize the first episode, it is trying to explain to us Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Like, the rest of the series is going to be about Theranos in a lot of ways. Because this one opens with her deposition in 2017 when she's first brought up on charges. And there's first the lawsuits and the first investigations. And we go back and forth with some, like, 2015, 16, 17 footage to then juxtapose back to who she was. So the point of this episode is for us to understand how Elizabeth got to that deposition.
Yeah.
And one of the key components of it is that she does not know how to human.
Yeah, and I think, like, you know, we can have this conversation we do all the time of, like, nurture versus nature. And it's a both. It's a both and.
Always a both.
Clearly, like, within her, there is something preventing her from accessing human emotions and understanding other people and their emotions. But I think the line that stuck with me that her mom said as well, that was huge foreshadowing and, like, peeling back this onion of who Elizabeth Holmes is and why she is the way she is. It's clear to me that her mother was sexually assaulted at some point. Before Elizabeth goes to Beijing, her mom says, like, she tells her mom, like, I'm going to become sexually active. Like, in a very earnest, this is what humans do moment. Before, you know, I want to lose my virginity before I go to college. I'm going to do it on this trip. And her mom, like, warns her about men, and especially when you're traveling. And so very clearly, like, something happens, and then her mom says it again, hints at her own experiences. And she says, you have to put it away and forget it, and one day you'll just be fine again. And I was like, oh, got it. Okay, so, like, part of this is she can't access her emotions. The other part of it is when she does, her mom has taught her to suppress them. And it's right after that she, like, you know, a minute later, she says to her mom, I love you. And her mom says, we need to wash our hands. So I was like, oh, so when she does access emotions, the response from her mother, at least, has been, no, that is not how we human.
And it's fascinating to me, too, this juxtaposition between her mother, who cares so deeply about appearances, and Elizabeth, who gives zero shits.
Zero fucks.
That,
Zero.
to me, there's, like, something in there about how she can't also access her mother. Because, like, that's the only way her mother shows love or affection is through visual perfectionism, which Elizabeth cannot find herself to care about. That it's this, like, you know, there's been people who have said Elizabeth Holmes reminds them of Sheldon Cooper from The Big Bang Theory. And I don't necessarily think that that's completely wrong. I think it's an exaggeration, and I think she's a lot more nuanced than Sheldon is because he's fictional. But also because I think she's a lot more nuanced. And I don't believe in diagnosing people that I've never met. It's a personal policy.
Just a little bugaboo of mine.
But it is fascinating to me that she can somehow she can understand what either motivates people or what they're afraid of.
Yeah.
But she can't access how to relate with them.
Mm-hmm.
And doesn't know how to do any level of intimacy.
Yes.
Because I will argue that her and Sonny's relationship is a lot of things, but intimate is not one of them.
No, not emotionally intimate.
Yeah.
We didn't unpack this yet, but we can now because you brought it up again, that, like, they form a very close bond.
Yes.
Intellectually, I think, in Beijing.
Yes.
And then they talk all the time.
Like more than I've ever talked to another human.
Yeah, they talk, like, every day when she returns to school. And then after she's sexually assaulted, Sonny calls her and she, like, lashes out at him and says, you know, why are you calling me? This is creepy. Like, don't you think it's creepy that I'm 19. Like, never talk to me again.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the episode, she decides to drop out, gets her parents to use her college tuition to invest in her, gets this Channing guy to invest, and goes to find an office in East Palo Alto and gets her window shot out in her car, and she calls Sonny. And that's when they get back to, like, they get together for real. Because he says, like, you can't push me away again. I will protect you. And in the next couple of episodes, we'll get more into this idea of protection, why people feel they need to protect Elizabeth. But they have a real affinity, to use romance language parlance, historical romance. They have an intellectual affinity, but I don't know that either of them knows how to do emotional intimacy.
No, especially because they both need therapy so badly. Like, every time Sonny opens his mouth, it's like, it's a case study for a therapy book. Like,
yeah.
Okay. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
They are a lot.
Yeah, and we should say, too, because sometimes we get into trouble on this channel when we talk about real people. We are talking about the characters that are being portrayed in this show.
Yes. Yeah, we don't actually know them.
We don't know Elizabeth Holmes. So when we talk about these people, yes, they are real people, but when we talk about them, we will be analyzing from the entirety of this episode and the rest of them from what they are portrayed in this fictional rendering.
Yes.
But it certainly appears that these two characters, who are real people in real life, don't know how to do that and really just need therapy.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I mean, it's been well publicized that Elizabeth was a terrible boss. And
that's not hard to fake.
Well publicized. And that was one of the things that a couple of the whistleblowers even said was I determine do you whistleblow a terrible boss? Like, what's the deal here?
Yeah.
So there are things we know about how she interacted with employees. But again, the only side of the story that we have about her relationship is hers.
Yeah.
We don't really have Sonny's. We definitely haven't had them sit down and do a Diane Sawyer tell-all. So this all could be conjecture. I don't know. But the personhood of Elizabeth, I find to be a credible portrayal based on what has been reported.
Yeah. Yeah. I think they have enough pieces that they can put together a relatively accurate rendering of Elizabeth Holmes. Sonny is the piece we don't know.
Not really.
Because, I mean, we know some of, probably from what people have said, from his involvement in Theranos, which we'll get to in the next couple of episodes. So I'm sure we know pieces of that from that, but, you know, he's the anathema in this situation. But yeah, I feel pretty confident at this stage we've got enough anecdotal information about Elizabeth Holmes to put this together. But boy, she is our
editor Eleanor calls this Schadenfreude TV. Like, she's been really missing Schadenfreude TV. Yeah. And I think it totally is. And if we could remove the harm done to actual people, like Dr. Erin said, this would be the greatest, like, gif of Michael Jackson eating popcorn ever, because you're just watching the hubris of someone collapse on itself. But what the other thing the show is going to be good at showing us, and we're going to track this in the future episodes, is that her hubris caused harm. Yeah. Not just to the sick people, but to her employees. Mm-hmm. And what she did to them. And how this is not hubris without collateral damage. And I am encouraged already. Obviously, Hulu dropped all 3 episodes, so we've watched all 3. And as we're talking, we're separating them out, but we've seen the first 3. This show takes that collateral damage seriously.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And I am encouraged then that when we get into some more significant collateral damage, they will take that seriously as well.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, that's why we love to talk about this stuff, right? Because we're both attracted to, like, the Schadenfreude of it all. You know, we've talked about WeWork. We've talked about, we didn't talk about it, but we watched The Tinder Swindler. And
yes, like Firefest.
We covered Firefest. We're fascinated by this intersection of, like, hubris and startup, venture capitalists kind of stuff that's happening in the 21st century. but all of these people cause harm as well, and that's why we like to talk about it, is because we're like, cool, so this is a product of society and our culture, and we should analyze and understand why, but we're also going to name the harm that was done. So this is like the perfect intersection for us, and thus our enthusiasm at covering it.
Yeah, I literally like texted somebody yesterday and said happy dropout day. Like, it is a very like, I have been waiting for March 3rd for a while.
You have. It's been on the calendar. We've been excited about it, and like the acting is phenomenal. I think we said this at the beginning, but like it's worth saying again. Amanda Seyfried, like, I feel like she has crawled into Elizabeth Holmes, and I hope Amanda Seyfried has a therapist.
Yeah, seriously. Also, like, I just love our girl Lily Kane succeeding in the world. Like, yeah, I love Veronica Mars alums doing well. So I'm really...
It's so good to see. Yeah, and like, it reminds me kind of, I was just thinking of this as I said, I hope Amanda Seyfried has a therapist. It seems like kind of a character dive that's like similar to Cillian Murphy's character on Peaky Blinders. And I wonder if she had to like live alone. Like, Cillian Murphy famously said, like, he moves out of his house when he's filming because his wife, like, can't have him around because of the person he becomes when he inhabits.
I mean, she's done a lot of interviews about creating the voice. I haven't watched any of them yet.
Yeah.
And I will say, by the time we hit episode 3, the voice thing is really fascinating, especially since we've watched This Is Paris and heard discussions about voices and performativity.
Oh,
we're gonna have a lot to say about
connection, but yeah,
we're gonna have a lot to say about voices. She does eventually nail the voice, like nail it. So I'm looking forward to spending my weekend watching some of the interviews to hear if Amanda addresses that, because I haven't watched anything yet. But it's a great question. I mean, it's. On the surface, I would imagine that Elizabeth Holmes is a very difficult person to find understanding for. And I think as empathy educators, our goal is always to find understanding.
Yeah.
We're already not struggling with it on a like emotional level. We're struggling with it on an intellectual level. Like we were talking before this about like, okay, so but how do we get to I will lie?
Yeah.
To become this person that I want to be. We haven't figured that quite out yet. No. But I'm really, really glad for 8 episodes to be able to see if we can get there.
Yeah, for real. No, I know. And, you know, I think it really is this process of peeling back the onion. And we might not understand what that onion looks like at the end, but hopefully we'll understand a little bit more about why she is the way she is or why she did what she did, but we might not. Like, I don't know. I struggle with this one, but at least I can struggle with you and with everyone else watching.
Absolutely. So, pals, if you're with us, make sure to hit the thumbs up on the video so that the algorithm shows it to other people and we can bring other people into this conversation. I'm sure we are not the only ones discussing the Dropout, but we would really appreciate a little bit of a bump up the YouTube algorithm. If you like our vibe, please subscribe to the channel. We will not only be covering every single episode of this show, but honestly, we cover anytime Elizabeth Holmes shows up in our Google alerts. So you just let us know. And a lot of other Schadenfreude TV, as we have already mentioned. We will not be covering Inventing Anna, though, before anyone asks, because that is a rabbit hole I cannot drag Dr. Erin down. But in the meantime, before next episode, there's a couple things that you can do to make sure you don't miss anything that we've done. Like I said, subscribe, but we've also got a newsletter where we'll be having lots of conversations about this empathy thing that we just alluded to, and we'd love for you to join us there. Dr. Erin, anything else for the good people?
No, thank you for joining us. Please join us again for episode 2. We're so excited to have this conversation, and we hope you are too.
Absolutely. See you then.